Chess YouTube, I would estimate 99% of 1e4 players make this one simple mistake out of the opening, and if you can learn to identify and counter this mistake by white, you will get so many easy wins. It's virtually free online chess ELO. Now, what am I talking about? Well, this trap occurs in the Roy Lopez opening after the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and then bishop b5, the Roy Lopez opening. Now, here in this game, as I typically do, I went for the Berlin defense with the move knight to f6 against my opponent 2016 Tenyin. Now here, white has two main ways to fight for an opening advantage. The two main moves here are d3, supporting the pawn on the e4 square, and short castles. Now, what do most white players do here? Well, most white players actually go for a really bad line from here. They castle usually. I take on e4 as I did here. And now most white players will go for this line where you play rook to e1 and then you take on c6 with the bishop. And there are a few different ways to achieve that position. For example, you can go rook e1, knight d6, knight takes, bishop e7, and then here most white players will take on c6, which is actually a massive mistake. And as you can see by the eval bar, black is already significantly better out of the opening in the Roy Lopez. That should not be happening. Now, in this game, white went for a slightly different move order, but the same position was achieved. White went here d4, heading potentially for a Berlin endgame. I went knight d6. Here, white took on c6. Bishop takes, d takes, and now the famous Berlin endgame occurs after d takes e5, knight f5, queen takes d8, and then king takes d8. Now, instead of that, here, white took on e5 with the knight. Knight takes e5, and we're sort of getting that exact same type of position here. Now, normally, white has the rook on the e1 square instead of having the pawn on d4, but otherwise, it's the exact same position we saw right here, essentially. So really, the only difference, the rook on e1 versus the pawn on d4, heading back to this right here. So virtually the same position. So bishop e7. Now, why is this position for white so bad? I mean, doesn't white have the better pawn structure and the faster development? What is going on here? Well, it turns out these two bishops, the bishops on e7 and c8, they are so strong in this open position that if black can just carefully defend and castle and slowly push back the white pieces, he will have a very large advantage. And beyond that, the pawns on the queen side, these queenside pawns are actually not that weak. Black does have good control of the d file here, good control of d5, for example, and d6. And overall, these pawns, they're not that weak. They're actually quite useful for various reasons. So what is black's plan here? Well, I'm going to show you in this game because I played a really, really good game out of the opening. But the main idea, we start with castling. For example, white went knight d2. I castle. And almost no matter what white does, our plan here is simple. We're going to start with the moves f6 and rook to e8. Now, f6, the good old-fashioned Ben Feingold counterattack. Ben Feingold, obviously, not a fan of this move in most positions, but it turns out in this exact position, f6 is a very good idea. It controls the e5 square, drives back that knight, and beyond that, we're going to use this light squared bishop to cover the weakened light squares on the king side, and white is going to have virtually no way to attack us. So here's how it works. Knight df3. Now f6. Ben Feingold counterattack. Very, very good move. As you can see by the eval bar here, black is doing outstanding in the opening, and white here is actually clueless as to what is going on. I drive back the knight. Knight d3. Then rook to e8. Again, rook e8 and f6 are typically the first two moves here you play in this variation after castling. Now here white goes h3. And now here, black is going to have a few different ways to proceed. In this game, I saw d4 was a little bit weak, so I did go knight f5 immediately. But the main idea is you're going to go bishop to e6, potentially bishop f7, potentially bishop f8, you're going to have these two bishops right here, maybe queen d7 and so on, maybe knight f5 and so on. And you're going to have this really safe, compact structure with both e5 and g5 being covered by the pawn. And from there, black can slowly but surely unwind. And as the game progresses, those bishops will be worth more and more in the game. Now, real fast, if you don't know, the bishop pair, when one side has two bishops and the other side has 1 or 0, this is worth about half a pawn for the side with the bishops, and that's about what we're seeing right here. That's based on the latest, Stockfish computer engine analysis and whatnot. Larry Kaufman has some very good articles on that if you're curious. So look up Larry Kaufman if you want to see why the bishop pair is so strong. All right, here, I go knight f5, pressuring the pawn on d4. White goes c3, defending, so far so good. And now bishop e6. Again, all part of my very simple plan. The bishop here drops back to f7. This one goes to f8. The queen goes to, say, d7. Maybe this rook comes out to, say, d8 and so on. And black here is going to slowly unwind. And white, he really doesn't have a plan. I mean, that is just amazing to me. I mean, look at white's position. Where is he supposed to attack? What is he supposed to do here? There really isn't anything white can really do that's productive. All right, in the game, white goes queen to c2. Decent square, I guess, for the queen. If white went rook to e1, then obviously bishop f7 would be the idea, retreating the bishop. Instead, queen c2. Now here I go queen d7, a decent move here. It turns out bishop f7 immediately may have been a little bit more accurate, but instead queen d7, we have knight to f4, pressuring the bishop, and now, of course, bishop f7 retreating, and white here has literally 0 targets. I'm doing fantastic. All right, rook to e1, and now bishop f8. This bishop retreats. And now it looks a little weird. I mean, after all, I have 2 bishops and I'm not really attacking anything yet. But the point is, I can just slowly defend, slowly unwind. And as more and more pieces come off the board, these bishops become stronger and stronger and stronger. All right, white, bishop d2. A decent move. And now it turns out here, my position is so good, the engine is already begging me to play the insane looking move g5 here, driving back the knight and potentially starting some sort of kingside attack. Now, I wasn't ready for that. Instead, my move here was simply knight to d6, a decent move, retreating and potentially setting up the idea of bishop g6 later, targeting the queen. Now here, white goes knight d3, and this was music to my ears. I mean, white here, why would you retreat this knight? It's perfectly placed on f4. It's pressuring g6, but after knight d3, another mistake by white. Here, I just go bishop g6, pinning the knight to the queen, and I'm just further entangling the white pieces. All right, white, bishop f4, trying to be active. Maybe that was the idea behind knight d3. But here, my queen comes to the f5 square, queen to f5. Look at this. And here, I'm doing outstanding. I pressure on the knight on d3, pressure on the rooks and so on, pressure on the bishop. And white, I mean, especially in a blitz game online, white's under a lot of pressure. And keep in mind, this is all just memorized plans. I literally have not made a single unique thought so far in this game. This is just, I lost this variation once before. I studied with the engine. I figured out what all the right plans are for black. And now it's just repeating these simple plans and winning free ELO online. I mean, it's amazing how simple chess can be when you can just learn these plans and just punish your opponents. All right, white here. He took on e8. Rook takes e8. We have rook takes, and then rook d1. Now, this move, the idea is to defend d3, but here, white missed a simple tactical idea, and now it's a little more complicated than it's not a blunder. It looks like a blunder. It looks like black can take the bishop here, white takes back, and then I win the queen on the f3 on the c2 square. That is what it looks like, and that's what I played. Queen takes f4, but it turns out in this position, white actually resigned on the spot. He thought he was losing. Now, I saw one step ahead. I thought white might make a mistake here, and it turns out white did by leaving the game. Now, what the heck is going on? What am I talking about? Well, it turns out white right here has a single move to save the game. He, of course, didn't find it. He rage quitted in the game. Now, if you like puzzles, pause the video right now and try to find the single idea for white that will basically get to a level position. So this move, queen takes f4, it technically wasn't the strongest idea, but it was enough to win the game. Now, the right idea for white, obviously, if you take this knight, I take the queen and I win the game. I'm just up a minor piece here. I have 3 minor pieces versus the 2 of white. But white here can actually play the intermediate move, queen to b3. Oh, sorry, queen to b3. Which hits the king with check, and if the king moves, say to h8, white takes the queen, and white wins the game. But I have, as well, the intermediate move, bishop to f7, targeting the queen. Now, both sides have their queens hanging. If white takes here, I take back here, white takes back, and then we have, effectively, an even endgame. This one bishop, not really that much stronger than the knight here, so overall, this would be an even endgame, and there are some other ideas leading to even games as well. But long story short, in this position, I simply take the bishop, and white here, 2016 Tenyin from, where is this, Italy? From Italy. He just resigns on the spot to my Berlin defense. Now, the moral of the story is not this weird tactical shot at the end of this. The moral is, the number one way white players try to counter my Berlin defense after knight f6 here is they go for the line with castles, usually rook e1, taking on c6 like this, and then on e5, and they think they're doing something correct. For example, fast forward here. Most white players, they think this is somehow good for white, and it is if you don't know what you're doing as black. However, if you just follow the simple plan I laid out here, bishop e7, castles, then we go f6 and rook to e8 like this, those 2 moves are very, very important. f6, rook e8 like this, then next, we're going for perhaps bishop f8, bishop e6, bishop f7, knight f5, and so on, queen d7. All these moves are so easy to make, and if you can just play these moves like this, you will win so many games. And once you get here, I mean, your advantage is just so consolidated. There's nothing white can possibly do to attack, especially without his precious light squared bishop. That bishop, he needs that to pressure h7 here, and without that, white has virtually no attack. We have the 2 bishops, we have a great endgame, a great middle game. We can play for a pawn break like c5 if we want to. We can go a5, a4, a3 if we want to. We can even gain space on the king side with a move like g5, which somehow the computer says is the best move here. But anyways, the Berlin defense, I mean, if this is the best that white can possibly do against the Berlin, which that is what most amateur players think, I mean, just play the Berlin and just gobble up these free online ELO. I'm not sure what else to say. I used to be afraid of the Berlin as black. I thought it'd be a boring opening, but it turns out it's not boring at all. Winning game after game with the Berlin is not boring at all, if you ask me. But anyways, if you want to learn how to play the Berlin defense from me, this is my main opening these days against 1e4, and it also happens to be arguably the strongest opening against 1e4, and pretty much the main opening of most top grandmasters these days. If you want to learn it directly from me, I do have a free chess community where I offer free group coaching and so on. I teach people the exact opening repertoire that I personally use in all of my online games and all of these online videos. So if you like the way that I play chess, the way I approach the game, the openings I use, the opening and middle game strategies I use, just join my free community. I'd love to have you there. I'd love to teach you exactly how I play the Berlin defense and all of my other openings for white and for black. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash that like button and subscribe and comment down below. And as always, I wish you the best of luck in your chess improvement journey in 2025 and beyond. And I'll see you in the next video.